Welcome to Transform Now, a podcast focused on intelligent automation and brought to you by SS&C Blue Prism. On this program, we talk about how organizations globally are rethinking the way they operate, utilizing process orchestration and AI-enabled digital workers to free up humans to do the work that matters most. We also share insights and tips on how you can embrace this new way of working and unleash your full potential. Let's get into the show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the weekly Pulse Check. I'm Brad Hairston.
And I'm Michael Marchuk.
This is our mini podcast that we produce each week, taking a look at what's in the news related to automation and AI. And Michael, let's dive right into the news, shall we?
We shall.
The first piece we're going to look at is actually from the White House. We should have like the presidential music,
Yes.
playing in the background. So from the White House, United States, potential labor market impacts of artificial intelligence and empirical analysis. So this is a very official readout or report that comes from the CEA, which is the Council of Economic Advisors. By the way, I looked that up. That's 3 people. So don't be too impressed.
Each one gets a letter in the acronym then.
That's right. These are, as you would expect, they're academics, professors, and the like that get together and they advise our president on economic policy. So exactly what you think. Well, they got together and they did a study on the potential impacts on the labor market of AI. So what did you think about the kind of the high level point that came out of this report?
Well, one of the things they brought up was that they thought there are a subset of job titles or roles that they consider to be highly AI exposed. And these occupations, they labeled them as, quote, potentially AI vulnerable. So I thought that was interesting because that leads more toward that fear kind of thing. Well, if it's vulnerable, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to manage through this? So I think that's a challenge in terms of some of the wording. But as you dig deeper into it, they also concede that these occupations are already showing some signs of a decreasing demand, such as lower growth and fewer of the workers incoming, taking these positions. So in my mind, it's like saying, hey, that's that buggy whip discussion again. We're having fewer and fewer buggy whip things as cars are becoming more popular. What are we going to do? The reality is that there will always be need for buggy whips because there will always be some segment of the population that will have that sort of need. But the reality is that our vehicles have transcended. So that's a 1900s problem, right? Now we're in the 2020s and we're trying to figure out what we're doing with all those AI jobs that are going to be lost. Well, these AI vulnerable jobs, again, are in roles that I think that we're going to see a continued growth in automation just in general. We've talked about this a couple times in the podcast, thinking about fast food and the activities that happen within there. I see constantly at every fast food restaurant that they're hiring, right? Because they can't get enough people to work there. So like that, it's a challenge. We also see high churn rates in customer service roles. So again, you can get people to work there, but they don't work there long. So that churn costs the organization's money, and those could also be considered potentially AI vulnerable. So the roles that they're talking about and the concepts, nothing new that, our listeners certainly will have heard these kind of reasoning before. But I think bringing it up and giving it potentially misleading or dangerous labels, like these are vulnerable positions we need to consider, it could lead others to think a little more on the fearful side rather than the reality that these are already declining roles.
What did you think about the percentage that they estimated is in this vulnerable segment?
They said
I
roughly
thought it was pretty low, 10%.
10%.
Really low.
10% does seem really low.
Yeah.
But then again, if you zoomed into the various occupations, that 10%, it is low, but it covers a whole lot of different industries and activities within those industries. So this is a subset, and what it doesn't necessarily go to the next side, it is where you're getting all offsetting growth in other activities or other roles that are just being created now because of the change of AI. So again, they continue to focus on, well, older workers have a hard time upskilling. These other roles are going away. So, and depending on how you look at it, it can be a very fearful thing, or something like this is natural progression based on technology. And as we've seen, and certainly as our listeners know, progression of technology is not getting slower. I mean, we're continuing to ramp this baby up. So I foresee that we're going to have this continual change where the economy will have a subset that's always going to be vulnerable to whatever the next technology advancements are.
Yeah.
But there's also going to be a whole bunch of stuff that's opening up that just never existed before because of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's great that they find little evidence that AI is going to negatively impact the labor market.
Overall,
I just think they're underestimating the percentage of the market that will be impacted. And you think about it, these are economists, right? They're not technologists. They're not ergonomists. They're not advisory firms. They're not really thinking about jobs and how technology is impacting so many different aspects of what is done, especially now with generative AI in the mix. So, but I think it's great that it's a pretty optimistic, hey, don't worry, it's not going to impact that many people, but I feel like they probably were off a bit there.
Yeah, the whole impact piece is the key. Is literally, I think you're going to have 95% of the employment be impacted in some way with AI. I believe their impact is sort of more a negative or detrimental impact rather than just a generalized impact.
Yeah, very true. Well, our second article is from TechCrunch, and it's titled, "What is Apple Intelligence? When is it coming? And who will get it?" Now, Michael, you and I talked about this a few weeks ago because Apple, I think it was in the month of June, did a big presentation on Apple Intelligence and what it's going to mean to Apple device users. Pretty impressive stuff. I know we talked about various pieces of it. But what does this article tell us that is new information?
So one thing that's new is the when. Telling us about what it is one thing. Telling us the when is the other. And as you might imagine, with Apple, with its gazillion devices globally, their rollout is going to start slow, and it makes sense, so they can weed things out as they go. So initially, it will be for U.S.-based devices, English only, and then they're going to continue that rollout more broadly as you get through the year of 2024, and then really hit more of a stride in 2025. So
October, right, is the rollout, I think, for the U.S.
Yeah, so we're just seeing this. It's just going to start soon, but it's a slow rollout to start with.
Yeah,
with more steam picking up next year as we go.
Okay. I also saw that only the Pro versions of the iPhone 15 and, of course, iPhone 16, which just got released,
just rolled out. Yeah,
they're the only ones that are going to have access. So I'm sitting here with my iPhone 12. I guess I'll have to upgrade in the future if I want to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I suspect a lot of it has to do with the way that they're rolling out their AI to the local device. Because as everyone's mentioned, I mean, Elon Musk was terrified to have Apple devices that would call to some open AI or to some other LLM elsewhere, just because of the security implications associated with it. So Apple's running these AI device components on top of a GPU that's within a system inside the phone, and your Apple iPhone 12 doesn't have that. So that's why you can't run there. This is, I wouldn't call it planned obsolescence, but when you start having these breakthrough features, you have to cut it off somewhere, and you have to have the devices ready to be able to support it. So going forward, it makes sense for them to do that. But I also see that this upgrade path, which is critical to Apple's business model, is reliant on them taking Apple Intelligence and making it extremely compelling to drive those upgrades rather than simply, my phone's a couple of years old, it still works fine.
Right.
To, gosh, I really want to have Apple Intelligence. That means I have to go to at least the newest phone to be able to get that.
The article mentions that they're using a small model bespoke approach, but they are going to use a private cloud offering that can, more complex queries can take advantage of, so that they can, it'll be invisible to the user, but they can make sure and answer those questions or those requests that are more complicated than that small model approach can resolve. So that'll be interesting to see how that works.
And they also say go ahead.
They also say Apple Intelligence is free, which I thought was very interesting. Just last week we talked about Amazon is upgrading Alexa with a Claude model underneath, and they're gonna charge more money for it, which is the first time I would pay for Alexa to begin with. But Apple says, no, we're just going to make this part of our, if you have an Apple phone, the right version, then you get this for free.
So all you need to do is upgrade to their $1,200 phone and you can have this for free. Is that how I'm understanding this?
That's free, Michael. It's free because I need that phone. I need that latest version.
Well, I think too, you're going to see the advancements, starting with this current model of Apple Intelligence. You're going to see, like we've seen with OpenAI and the model refinements and enhancements as they go, the Apple Intelligence, which I love their acronym is still AI, is going to be built into a bunch of different apps. So whether that's Siri or Maps or your phone or your watch, we're going to start seeing some really interesting applications leveraging Apple Intelligence going forward. And because of the refinements of the model, I think people will be, again, more compelled to upgrade because of the hardware that's required to support all these really interesting new functions that people are going to want.
Yeah, agreed. Well, our final article for today comes from the MIT Technology Review. And this is my favorite of the day. It's titled, "To be more useful, robots need to become lazier." So this delves into the field of study known as lazy robotics. And it's from a academic over in the Netherlands. He believes that teaching robots to effectively be lazier with their data could pave the way for machines to be better at the way they interact and also more efficient. So they're using less energy. So what did you think about this?
This is something that a lot of these companies who are looking at physical or external robots or any device that matter that experiences the external world through sensors, they need this kind of viewpoint because as every automatic car company, and the article goes through this, Waymo and any other self-driving car, even your Teslas who have all these sensors and cameras, they have to evaluate everything in the world that passes by them. And if our brains had to do that, we probably wouldn't get out of the driveway, right? Because of the amount of data that's nearby. I don't need to be thinking about the length of my grass as I pull down the driveway and the value of the color of that green or not green that it might be as I'm backing out. So those are things that my brain naturally discards, right? But things that are important, like things that are in my path of travel or things that can affect my path of travel, that's important to me. So I tend to focus on those things. I think that's where this comes from, is that robots who have these sensors need to learn how to discard or to ignore non-critical information and not try to absorb everything around them when in fact those other pieces are extraneous to what they're doing or what could impact their mission, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Last week we talked about the energy sector in the Pulse Check. We talked about energy companies now prioritizing AI and how they're facing a spike demand just from changes in the world, but also from the surge in AI, how AI requires so much more power. So lazy robotics would seem to fit in really nicely with that in terms of mitigating or determining what can we do to make these machines consume or require less energy and thus conserve it, because at some point we're going to have a crisis where we just can't provide the energy that all these, this proliferation of devices and AI solutions require. Hopefully we don't get to that point, but it's said that a Chat GPT query takes 10 times the energy to be answered than a Google query. I don't know if that still holds up, but that's at least what I keep hearing. So there is an AI, surge in energy request or need for energy. So let's see if lazy robotics can help us wade out of that. Pretty interesting field.
And to that end, we talk about the energy. If you flip it around and say, well, if I can reduce the power requirements for the AI that's running on a specific device, then maybe your iPhone 12 can run the Apple Intelligence on it at some point, because they've reduced the model's requirements to be able to support that. Or, for example, I'm able to build in lesser expensive chips into warehouse robots, because they can more quickly identify and manage their path without requiring the overhead, the CPU and GPU overhead, to plot all that information all at once. So all around, it makes it good for everyone, both from a grid perspective, but also from an expense perspective, as people are looking to procure devices to be able to use this technology. I think learning to be lazy is a good thing, evidently.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Let's make sure our wives hear that. Okay, well, that's all the time we have for the Pulse Check today. Thanks for joining us. Remember to listen to our other podcasts that we publish each week and featuring an amazing guest. We've had some really good ones recently, so you need to be sure and check those out. But thanks for being here, and we will talk to you next week in our next Pulse Check. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to Transform Now, the podcast from SS&C Blue Prism. You can find all of our episodes on your favorite podcast channel, as well as YouTube. To stay on top of the hottest topics in the world of intelligent automation, subscribe now. The future of work is here.